Hi. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be working on the Environmental Science Merit Badge. This merit badge is Eagle required and will help Scouts learn about the environment around them and how to live sustainably. There are several spots throughout this merit badge where requirements have options about which parts you'd like to work on. We're going to focus on a few specific parts of them, but if you'd like to do alternatives, that's completely fine and up to you. The bulk of this merit badge is going to be presented by Ms. Gretchen Shumpert and Robert Scorpio Carlin. As a quick reminder, you can look over the requirements, grab this presentation, or get the merit badge workbook from troop2319.com/scoutingcontinues and then click the link for the Environmental Science Merit Badge. In requirement 1, you're going to have to make a timeline of the history of the environmental science in America. This part you can do in a couple of different ways. You can do it on a computer, you could do it by hand. It's completely up to you. And the important thing is that you include dates, names of popular organizations, and important events. In just a moment, we're going to click a link on the screen here that you can also find on this Troop 2319 Scouting Continues website that I just mentioned. And we're going to look at a very in-depth timeline that was created by a scout in Troop 770 out of Connecticut. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this presentation over to Ms. Gretchen Shumpert, and we'll get that link clicked.
And when you click on that link that's in Scouting Continues, this is what you'll see, is this timeline, okay? Now, this young man is in Connecticut, and he has done a great job with his timeline. You guys do not have to be nearly as detailed, and you guys can look at his timeline, and you're welcome to take some of the things that he has done and pick some of your favorites from this timeline, and you can add in some other things that you find as well if you'd like. Okay, so some of the things that he has on here are 1872 Yellowstone Park became the first national park. If you look a little further down, Congress passed in 1894 an act prohibiting hunting in Yellowstone. Okay. In 1894, New York amended its constitution declaring that state forests, lands in Adirondack and the Catskill Mountains should be kept as forever wild. Okay. He has President Teddy Roosevelt establishing a federal protected wildlife refuge. So these are all things that were interesting to him. Now, this is a name that you guys might recognize, especially some of you older scouts. 1904, Hornaday. Do you older scouts recognize the name Hornaday? There was a Hornaday Award that you will see later on. Hornaday Award was created later, but William T. Hornaday in 1904 authored a bill in Congress to protect migratory birds. And you'll also see that he puts the Boy Scouts of America symbol on the ones that are just significant for the Boy Scouts. So that's how he did his, and you guys can do yours however you like and make it your own. Okay, so with that, we're going to go back to the other. Okay. All right, and switch to.
I think they're looking at.
Okay, do you guys still see requirement 1? Is that what you're seeing on your screen? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Now we're going to switch to requirement number 2. This is another one that you guys are going to do on your own because I'm not going to bore you with definitions. You guys know most of these. Population, extinction, some of the words like biosphere and watershed you may not know, but you guys are really good with dictionaries and with Google, and you guys can look those up. I'm confident that you can do that. So look up all of those words. Write quick definitions, just little notes on your paper so that you can tell me about them later. And we'll set up a conference call when you guys are all done with your merit badge, when you've got all of your notes written down, and we can talk about the different pieces so we can sign you off on everything together. Okay, with that now we are going to move to requirement 3. Okay, now requirement 3 has multiple parts. Okay, with requirement 3, they have a requirement that you do 7 of the 8 options that they have available. Okay, so they give you A through H, I think it is, which that is 8 different options. You only have to do 7 of them. Okay, we're going to talk about all 8, and I'm going to give you a recommendation for the one that I would do if I were you, but you don't have to go with my recommendation. If there's one that you guys like better or that fits better with what you like to do, that's perfectly fine. You guys do the one that you want to do. It's your merit badge. Okay, so with that, right now we're going to go to do 3A option 3, and that is, what is an ecosystem? Okay, so an ecosystem is a biological community of interacting organisms and their environment. Okay, so it's how everything is interacting together. Ecosystems depend on a careful balance of the relationships, and that balance is very, very important because that balance has to be maintained and it has to adjust in order for that ecosystem to survive. Okay, so let's talk about this particular ecosystem here. Okay, now this is a lake ecosystem. This could be one that we would see when you guys are camping at many of the campsites that you guys go to. Okay, now look at the different things that are in this ecosystem. Okay, everything that you see here is included in the ecosystem. So it includes the fish, the otter, the ducks, the geese, the deer, the insects, the gastropods, the planaria. Okay, let's see that. I can't get my little mouse to point to it for you, but that's the little guy in the yellow circle that looks like he has a triangular head. Okay, all the reptiles and the amphibians. It also includes the water and the trees, both the ones that are dead and the ones that are alive, because those are all places where the animals can live, and they all contribute to the ecosystem. And it also includes the pollution from the city. It includes the runoff from all the surrounding areas and far beyond. So upstream, beyond the rivers and the streams. Okay, it includes the fecal material that's running into the lakes from the streams. It includes the fishermen and the pets that they bring with them, anything that they leave behind or bring with them. Okay, anything that's planted in the farm. Okay, and it also is very important that there is a balance of predators and prey species, that there's a balance of the food to maintain the prey species. And it's also important that there is a balance for the animals and the bacteria and the fungi to break down kind of the decomposers. Okay, so if you look down at the bottom, you'll see a lot of litter down there. That's included in the ecosystem, isn't it? Because that's stuff that's all in there. It's all factoring in. Okay, so think about that as we continue talking through the merit badge, because everything that we talk about as we continue through all relates to the ecosystem. Okay, everything factors back in. And when anything gets out of balance with the ecosystem is when we start getting into trouble. Okay? All right. And remember, if I get going too fast, all of these slides are also available for you to go back and look at if you need to write anything down that I'm going too quick on. Okay. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to 3B. And the one that I recommend for 3B is 3B3, and that's talking about acid rain. Okay, so what is acid rain? Acid rain is caused primarily by sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. These gases come mainly from human activities like vehicles and power plants that burn fossil fuels that mix with water vapor in the air. Okay, and that water vapor becomes more acidic when it falls as rain, and it affects plants and the environment. So let's get into that a little bit more, okay, and figure out what that means exactly. Okay, so at the top of the slide, you'll see the pH scale. Okay, a lot of you guys have probably seen this in school, and the pH scale is a scale that kind of rates everything on how acidic or alkaline something is. Okay, so things that are more alkaline have a higher pH, things that are more acidic have a lower pH, and things that are neutral have a pH of 7. Okay, now rain is naturally slightly acidic. It has a pH of about 5.6 due to the carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere naturally. Okay, but the additions of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide drops the pH to 5 or lower, and anytime the pH drops to 5 or lower, it's considered acid rain. All right. The other thing that I should mention is that Scorpio is kind enough to answer questions. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and drop them into the chat, and Scorpio will be able to answer them for you if you've got questions for him. Okay. So I was saying that pH of 5 or lower is acid rain, and it has the typical acid rain pH of being at about 4.3. But the classification of acid rain is anything 5 or lower. Okay. So why is that a problem? Okay. Why is acid rain a big deal? Well, it goes back to that balance. Okay. So anytime that we start messing with things like pH, it affects that balance. And if we start changing the pH of rain, which plants depend on, right? That's how they get all the liquid that they need. Plants can die, or they can become weakened so that they become more easily harmed by other stresses, things like changes in temperature, so extreme cold or heat, insects, or drought. Okay. It damages the aquatic ecosystems by changing the pH of the water, and it affects everything that's in the lakes and the streams and everything that depends on the lakes and the streams, okay, and the oceans. The gases are easily blown to other counties and states and other countries by winds, especially when you think of areas that are close to borders. Especially in the northern United States and southern United States. Things can blow up into Canada, down into Mexico, and places like Europe where countries are closer together. Pollutions in one area can very easily transfer into other areas, okay? All right, so what can be done? On a bigger scale, we can limit the use of fossil fuels and reduce pollutants. And that's one thing that, that the government is working to do, okay? But for a smaller scale, things that we can do as individuals, we can carpool, we can conserve energy by turning off lights and equipment when we're not using them. We can limit air conditioning use and adjust our thermostats, okay? All right, so now we're going to move to 3C3. Now, this is one that you guys would do on your own if you choose. I recommend that you do 3, but again, you don't have to do that. If you would prefer to do 1 or 2, that is completely your choice. For 3C3, it says describe the impact of a waterborne pollutant on an aquatic community, and then write a 100-word report on how that pollutant affects aquatic life, what the effect was, and whether the effect is linked to biomagnification. So we're going to talk real quick about what kinds of things could be water pollutants, and then we're going to talk about what biomagnification is, so that if you choose to do this one, you know what it is. Okay, so what are waterborne pollutants? They could be things like sewage, could be fertilizers, things that are put on lawns or plants, farms to help things grow, pesticides, things to keep away insects. It could be industry pollutants like mercury or lead or paints or adhesives. It could be products that we use in our households, like cleaners and paints and things that we would, without thinking about it, wash down the drain, okay? They could be petroleum products like oil or gas or kerosene. And there are also thermal pollutions, like when we use water from rivers to cool a power plant. That water heats up in an effort to cool down that power plant. And so it heats up then that liver, that's a cross between river and lake, liver. It heats up the lake or the river, okay? And then with that rise in temperature, it can affect the organisms that live in that lake or river, okay? All right, so what is biomagnification? Biomagnification is the concentration of toxins or pollutants in an organism as a result of it ingesting or eating other plants or animals in which the toxins are more widely distributed, okay? So without giving you a specific example, because I don't want to take away one of your options, okay? But it would be something big eats something smaller that has eaten something even smaller that has a pesticide or something else on it. And it's eaten a lot of those things that have a lot of pesticides on it. And by eating a lot of those things, those pesticides aren't going away. They're magnifying by it eating a lot of those things that while it might not have hurt the animal that it's eating, by the bigger animal eating a lot of the things with just a little bit of pesticide on it, it's affecting the bigger animal much more, okay? So that's what biomagnification is. Think about the magnifying glass. It makes it bigger, okay? All right, so that's what biomagnification is. All right, with that, we move on to 3D3. Now, this is one that you'll also do on your own, but this is one that I think is super easy. That's why I recommend this one, okay? This is just taking a picture. And what it says to do is photograph an area affected by erosion, okay? And then you share your photographs with your counselor, and that's me, and discuss why the area has eroded and what might be done to help alleviate the erosion. So I'm going to show you an example from my backyard, actually 2 examples. These are both water erosion. In our area, that's the easiest thing. You'll probably find that that's the easiest thing in your home or your neighborhood to find too. There's also wind erosion, but we don't get that as much around here. So if you look at the one on the left, that's a picture from one of our downspouts. And you'll see, it's a little hard to tell, but right underneath the downspout, there's a deep groove. Now that downspout comes off of the roof. And so in a heavy rain, there's a lot of water that flows. And you can see all of my pine straw is washed away, and it's made a nice little groove under there. And all of the ferns, little tiny ferns that are trying to grow next to it, and all of my trillium on the right side have been washed away. And so it's got a nice little groove there and no pine straw. Now something that I could do is I could dig a little trench there and bury a trench or put some gravel down to have a place for that water to flow. But it's just growing in a planting bed and it's not causing a whole lot of trouble. So it's kind of okay for me that it's going there because it kind of waters my plants for me. So I don't mind too much. So I haven't done anything with it. The spot on the right is where the overflow is for my rain barrel, and you can see a bigger trench there. Now you can see the deeper groove there. What happens with my rain barrel is there's a downspout that comes into the top of the rain barrel, and when it rains, it fills up that rain barrel, and if there's too much rain, that rain barrel will overflow. And there's an overflow valve at the top that the rain will just drip out of the top or flow out of the top if it's a heavy rain. And you can see there's a deep groove, and it's even dug itself underneath the roots that are there. So that's something we may need to dig a trench or put some plants in there that really love water right underneath that area. To put up maybe a little bog garden there would be good. So that would be something that we could do in that spot. Okay. All right, so that's what you can do. Look for areas around your house or around your neighborhood where water flows a lot, and see if you can find areas where you have erosion that you can take pictures of.
Can I say something real quick?
Really, really quick, because I've got to keep going.
Okay, so in the neighborhood there's a pool and some of the water like goes into a neighbor's yard.
Okay, that's a great spot for you to take pictures of. All right, so requirement 3, this is one to do on your own. This is, I think, a fun one. I recommend that you do 3E1 or 3E2, but you can do any of the 3 that you'd like, okay? These are on endangered species, and remember Scorpio told you about several endangered species in Georgia that were reptiles and amphibians that you might want to look into more, but you can pick any one that you want, okay? The first one talks about endangered species found in our state. You need to find out about natural habitats and write a 100-word report. The second one is research on endangered or threatened species that's now recovered. So pick whichever one you think is more interesting and write about that. Okay, and again, a 100-word report is much shorter than you think. Okay, all right, F. And this one is the last one that we will do today. All right, you get to choose one of the 3, okay? And again, if you don't want to do this one, this can be one of the 8 that you don't do, okay? Look around your home and determine 10 ways your family can help reduce pollution, and then practice at least 2 of these methods for 7 days, and then discuss with your counselor, that's me, what you've learned. Or you can determine 10 ways to conserve resources or use resources more efficiently in your home, at school, or at camp, and then practice at least 2 of these methods for 7 days and discuss with your counselor what you've learned. And then the last option is perform an experiment on packaging materials to find out which ones are biodegradable and discuss your conclusion with your counselors. A lot of us are getting lots of packages from week to week as we get things delivered to our house instead of going to the store. So you might have some different packaging materials that you could come up with an experiment and test out different things. So whichever of those 3 that you would like to do, you only have to do one of them, or you can do none at all and leave F off completely as the one that you skip. And I think that's the last of it. So when we come back on next week, on the 22nd, we will talk about drone bees and worker bees and pollination. Are there any questions? We've got about 2 minutes left for questions, and I have stayed within my 20 minutes. All right, Scorpio, is there anything that I forgot to mention?
Nothing I can think of.
Okay.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Can you go back to the slide about the biomagnification?
Yeah. Oh. Yep. That's the one where the toxins build up more and more in each creature that eats it. Because it's getting more and more of the toxin from all of the other things that are also eating the toxin. And if you look up biomagnification, there are examples, but I didn't want to put them on there because it would take away an example for you, and I didn't want to do that. Okay, if there are no other questions, I have hit my 20-minute mark, and I promised you guys I wouldn't go over that. So shall we move to a game?